In Jurassic World, Chris Pratt and Ron Howard's daughter are taking us back to Isla Nublar for the first time in 22 years.
But before we all go and watch everyone get eaten, we figured we'd remind you about the classic film from 1993, which was based on Michael Crichton's novel from 1990. And, you know,
Finding as many differences as we can between the novel and the movie.
which is probably as daunting as trying to use a porta potty while a T-Rex is giving you a yum-yum face. I'm Michael Truly.
And I'm Casey Redmond.
So without further ado,
And no restraint on spoilers. What's the difference? Let's start with what everyone cares about.
fucking dinosaurs, bro. One of the dino groups everyone wanted to see in the movie as a kid because they fly and they're awesome. But were not included are the pterosaurs,
In the novel, though, there's an entire scene in the pterosaur enclosure.
which they switched up and recycled parts of for Jurassic Park 3.
Ooh.
In the film, Dennis Nedry is the only character to encounter a Dilophosaurus.
In the novel, the visitors first encounter the Dilophosaurus in its enclosure on the tour, and later, Grant and the kids encounter a pair while on the river. Other dinosaur species in the novel, Apatosaurus, Microceratops, Othnielia, Styracosaurus, Euoplocephalus, Hypsilophodon, and Maiasaura do not appear in the film adaptation. The only hadrosaurs observed in the first film are Parasaurolophus. Apatosaurus is replaced by Brachiosaurus, unspecified hadrosaurs are replaced by Gallimimus, and Stegosaurus was only seen in the tube label, despite being misspelled as Stegosaurus.
That sounds the same if I say it.
Ankylosaurus, a relative of Euoplocephalus, also got cut, but eventually does appear in Jurassic Park 3. Finally, the book includes several scenes from the Procompsognathus dinosaur.
Many of the sequences and references involving it were dropped from the film adaptation, resulting in significant plot differences.
Because of this, the first section of the book was omitted from the film, meaning all the characters from that section never appeared. Most notable, Dr. Martin Gutierrez, who plays a supporting role in both novels.
Sorry, Dr. Marty, your ass is grass.
The book's opening chapter describes a young American girl on vacation at a beach shore with her family in Central America getting attacked by Procompsognathus while her parents are off just laughing about how wonderful life is.
It was cut from the film, but it didn't go unused. The sequence was later recycled as the opening for the movie The Lost World, with the British family cruising to Isla Sorna instead of the mainland. The film's opening showed the events that are alluded to by a bedridden patient in the book's prologue.
Therefore, both versions open with a fatal raptor attack on a park worker, though from different perspectives.
The movie opens with Robert Muldoon, the game warden, leading the inclusion of the female raptor to the pen. When it goes apeshit, kills a JP worker, and leads to the often imitated
While the book opens with a med school graduate taking up a medical practice on the island off of Costa Rica when a helicopter makes an emergency landing at her hospital. The victim has lacerations to his chest and a slimy saliva-looking substance on his wounds, but the shady Jurassic Park worker who brought him there is insisting that it's a construction accident. The boy keeps repeating "El raptor" to the nurse, and she looks it up to find the English translation, bird of prey.
On top of dropping the Procompsognathus dinosaur, the film also loses an entire subplot about dinosaurs escaping from the island.
So in both versions, things are a little rocky to say the least on Isla Nublar.
And John Hammond needs to reassure his scared investors that his crazy dino idea is the shit.
And he decides to do so by getting together a group of experts to vet the place.
Real big difference here.
In the novel, John Hammond is a giant fucking asshole.
Sure, Attenborough was blind to the power of his own creation, and his passion made him a little bit of a douche, but he had the old man charm. And, you know, eventually he renounces his failed creation. This redemption is probably why they let him live.
In the novel, he cares about one thing and one thing only: Jurassic Park. Even when his own grandchildren are lost and for all he knows dead somewhere with their entrails hanging out, he shows what can only be described as feigned concern. In fact, Hammond is so megalomaniacal, after the entire thing goes to shit, he's actually planning to start over with a new Jurassic Park. He learns nothing from Malcolm's endless moralizing about chaos theory and the impossibility of a flawless system. His megalomania ends up being his downfall.
How about our experts?
Well, Dr. Alan Grant is described in the book as a barrel-chested, bearded man of 40 and an outdoorsman who hates intellectuals, a bit like Indiana Jones without all that bookishness and those emotional arcs. He admires kids because they love dinosaurs just as much as he does.
Movie Grant is more of a brainy scientist with deep connections to the land who is opposed to children, but by the end of the film he learns that looking out for another more helpless life than his own isn't so terrible.
Dr. Ellie Sadler is basically the same in the book as she is in the film.
She's blonde, she's smart, and she's a badass. There are two big differences between them, however.
In the book, Sadler is a sexy, darkly tanned 24-year-old and not romantically involved with Grant.
Which means she's looking.
She's set to marry some douchebag back at college.
Damn it, there goes my shot.
In the novel, Tim is older and good with computers, although still interested in dinosaurs, while Lex is a young tomboy and interested in sports ball. She's also pretty much useless.
In the movie, the roles are switched around, with Lex being older, good with computers, and pretty handy throughout the story, while Tim is younger and a huge dinosaur fan.
Dr. Ian Malcolm was not as prominent a character in the book as he was in the movie. In the book, he's much more of a serious scientist as opposed to the guy with all the good one-liners and a great laugh.
In the movie, the T-Rex injures him when attempting to save the kids.
But in the novel, Malcolm doesn't actually attempt to save the children. He sees the T-Rex and freaks out, running for the welcome station and getting tossed around in the process. The wound to his leg is the one that ultimately leads to his death from infection and loss of blood.
In the movie, we get Donald Gennaro as a slimy lawyer with throwaway lines and a douchebag mentality.
Thank you.
He meets his demise on top of a toilet bowl at the hands of a T-Rex right after he pisses his pants and runs in fear, leaving the children behind. Classic lawyer.
Well, in the book, he's still a lawyer, but he's one that is skeptical of the dinosaur zoo situation, as well as being a muscular hero with children of his own. He goes back into the park after the T-Rex accident and tries to find the children and Dr. Grant. He also goes one-on-one with a raptor and defeats it with nothing more than a handheld weapon and brute strength. He winds up living in the novel and doing justice to lawyer stereotypes everywhere. There's also a guy named Ed Regis in the book.
The character was eliminated in the movie, but his character traits were imprinted onto Gennaro.
This character is actually a slimy Jurassic Park employee instead of a lawyer, but he meets a similar demise.
Mr. Arnold is the same and dies the same,
Except John Arnold in the novel
was changed to Ray Arnold in the film, possibly to avoid confusion with the character John Hammond.
Dennis Nedry is the same slimy bastard and dies similarly, except in the novel, Nedry dies outside of the Jeep,
And in the film, the Dilophosaurus follows him into the Jeep and kills him there.
Dr. Henry Wu oversees the majority of the Jurassic Park cloning and is head of the research facility. There's a lot of backstory between him and Hammond that dives into their work history, their trial and error, and their constant debates over the safety of the park. He's a key component to breaking down the chapters upon chapters of science that is littered throughout the novel. He plays a part in trying to restore power to the island and winds up being attacked and killed by velociraptors in the visitor center.
In the movie, we see him on the tour.
Dr. Jerry Harding was the chief of veterinary medicine at the San Diego Zoo before taking the job with Hammond and was the world's leading expert on avian care. He not only survives in the book, but his daughter is a key member of the Lost World. As a vet, he's the only one who can treat Malcolm when he is injured by the T-Rex, and he attempts to save Ellie from the raptors by opening the roof door to let her into the safari lodge.
In the movie, he is that guy who was trying to figure out what was wrong with the sick Triceratops.
So, the tour.
Okay, mostly everything is the same plot-wise until the tour. The park's computer systems are updated in the movie.
The novel called for 3 Cray XMP supercomputers to be used for sequencing the dinosaur DNA.
In the movie, the Mr. DNA tour animation reveals that the park uses thinking machine supercomputers, specifically 8 connection machine CM5s, as revealed by Dennis Nedry, and Silicon Graphics workstation.
In the novel, the tour cars are Toyota Land Cruisers,
But in the film, they're Ford Explorers. Product placement!
in the novel, Dr. Ellie Sadler disembarks from the tour to tend to a sick Stegosaurus.
In the film, a sick Triceratops was used instead.
Donald Gennaro does not go back to the tour cars after tending to the sick Stegosaur and therefore is not present for the Tyrannosaurus attack.
In the movie, a tropical storm hits the island. Most InGen employees leave, except for John, Game Warden Robert, and Chief Systems Engineer Ray Arnold. During the storm, Dennis shuts down park security, and as a result, the Tyrannosaurus breaks through the deactivated electric fence surrounding its pen. It attacks Tim and Lex, and wounds Ian. The children and Alan only narrowly avoid being killed and eaten.
In the novel, there are still about 20 or so Jurassic Park staff members on the island, while the rest evacuate to the boat, leaving at night to avoid the storm. Hammond insists that there is no way dinosaurs can get off the island and that all of them are accounted for, but Grant sees 2 baby raptors playing on deck and they have to warn the boat and tell them to turn around. Whoops, the radio's broken. Let's just go back in the car and go back to the visitor center. Whoops, power outage, chaos ensues. In the novel, Dr. Grant learns that some of the Jurassic Park dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus, can only see movement. He makes this discovery when he freezes during the Tyrannosaur attack on the Land Cruisers, later confirming it after waking up in a tree from which a hadrosaur is eating.
In the movie, he knows this before arriving on the island, due to fictional paleontological theory.
Paleontological.
Immediately warning several other characters to sit still during the Tyrannosaur attack because their vision is based on movement.
In the novel, Tim Murphy is quite skilled in climbing trees,
But in the film, he doesn't want to climb down until the Land Cruiser starts to fall down the tree.
there's also a junior T-Rex in the novel, as well as a bigger one. In the novel, the suspicion that several of the dinosaurs are breeding on their own is made during the initial tour when Malcolm questions an apparent population increase displayed on one of the computers.
In the film, Grant first discovers this when he comes across a nest of hatched eggs while he and the kids are stranded in the park.
In the novel, the power actually comes back on a couple hours after the T-Rex attacks the 2 cars.
Once Grant and the kids are lost, there's a massive plot section that never happens in the film.
While Grant and the kids are making their way back to the visitors center, it's Muldoon and Gennaro who go out and wrangle up a bunch of dinosaurs, as well as organize some workers to fix the fences and get Jurassic Park back online. Another sequence involving Dr. Grant and the children being chased by the Tyrannosaurus Rex down a river on an inflatable raft was also dropped from the film.
However, this river raft sequence became the inspiration for the Jurassic Park River Adventure ride at Universal Studios Hollywood. This scene is also included in the video game adaptation for the Sega Genesis, if you remember what that is.
Then Muldoon tranquilizes the T-Rex. Grant and the kids also stumble upon the pterodactyl pin that wasn't on the tour. Grant and the kids are again attacked and make their way into a bunker where they find a jeep
and finally get moving.
In the novel, the only lethal weapons Muldoon was allowed to have were a pair of rocket launchers, although a shed of nerve gas grenades that Muldoon did not know about was found.
In the film, he opens a locker full of shotguns and AR-15s, and he probably had more because some of the members of the loading team in the beginning had guns, and just guns coming out of guns.
Then the book and movie coincide while Mr. Arnold attempts to reboot the systems and get Jurassic Park back online,
leading him to the maintenance shed and his similar death. Ellie and Muldoon go out after him, and just like in the movie, they notice that the raptors got out of their pens.
The major change here is that in the book, Muldoon survives the deadly ambush by hiding from the raptors in a pipe system. He shimmies his way back to the visitor center and survives the entire ordeal. In the novel, Ellie Sattler comes across a velociraptor with a genetic mutation that allows it to change the color of its skin.
The device is so minor it's left out of the film.
In the novel, several of the survivors take refuge from the velociraptors in the Safari Lodge, a guest hotel intended for the park's future visitors, and a portion of the plot is centered around reactivating the lodge's security system, which include electrified skylights.
This sequence is completely omitted from the film, replaced with the much smaller scale situation of reactivating the visitor center's electronic door locks to keep the raptors out of the control room.
During the time of the raptor attack on Ellie, as well as the kitchen raptor attack on the children, the raptors are simultaneously trying to break into the security compound and kill an injured Malcolm, Hammond, Dr. Wu, and Dr. Harding.
It's here that Wu gets eaten, Malcolm dies from his leg wounds, and Grant saves the day.
He actually poisons and destroys each raptor by injecting the lysine into eggs, then gets them to eat it.
Yummy. No T-Rex entry exploding through the building to eat the raptors and save the day. Score one for the movie.
Instead, we get the power back on in the park and the demise of John Hammond and the raptor's nest they've been trying to find since the beginning of the book.
Grant is now determined to see their breeding habits up close, sexy, and destroy them once and for all, much less sexy.
He, Ellie, Muldoon, and Gennaro head into the park to find and gas the nest. During these events, John Hammond is running around the park and bitching to his employees about the system's imperfections.
Just after cursing his grandchildren for playing a part in the park's failure, Hammond is frightened by a recorded Tyrannosaurus roar, falls down a steep hillside, breaks his ankle, and is killed by compies.
The ultimate creator is killed by his creation after the power is restored, and he thinks he has proven his point that he does have control. So there it is, really. The survivors in the novel are Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Lex Murphy, Tim Murphy, Donald Gennaro, Robert Muldoon, Dr. Harding, and several workmen. It is implied that Malcolm died, but double spoiler alert, in the sequel it is revealed that he survived.
In the film, the survivors are Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Lex Murphy, Tim Murphy, Ian Malcolm, and John Hammond. In the film, Henry Wu and Dr. Harding, along with all the workmen, left before the crisis has happened.
In the novel, the island is suddenly and violently razed by Costa Rican Air Force. Survivors of the incident are indefinitely detained by the United States and Costa Rican governments. Weeks later, Grant is visited by Dr. Martin Gutierrez. Gutierrez informs Grant that the dinosaurs are off the island and that none of them, with the possible exception of Tim and Lex, are going to be leaving anytime soon.
In the film, they watch the island from the helicopter, but it isn't burned and destroyed by the military, which is why we get to go back in Jurassic World! Well guys, those are most of the major differences, and I bet you either want to pop in the movie or get around to reading the book or do something else entirely.
Like this video if you want to see more of What's the Difference.
Make sure to subscribe to CineFix for more awesome movie content.
And let us know in the comments what you thought about all the changes.
Which did you like better? What would you have liked to see on screen? More Harding? More Wu? Put all that down in the comments.
See you next time.